What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the ALLiN podcast, Thursday Thoughts edition. Is it Thursday Thoughts, Teddy?
It's more like a special edition.
Special edition, not Thursday Thoughts. As always, brought to you by our good friends at FitAid, Cured Nutrition, Iron 3 Formulations, and First Form. This is a special edition. We've got guests in town. So this coming weekend, we have our Coaches Summit. All of the Iron 3 staff will be in town, just kind of collaborating and doing some unique things. And, one of our newest employees, just slash friend, slash badass, slash just amazing human being, Michael is in town with us. And so it's really cool to introduce him here on the podcast. You guys will be seeing and hearing a lot from him. This podcast is all about what is the definition of going all in? And, what does that mean to us? What does that mean as a company? And what should it mean to you, the individual? I think that you'll actually be shocked at a lot of the things that we uncover, because what you might believe to be going all in right now could be exactly what we discussed as being completely wrong. So give this one a listen, guys. Enjoy it, and we will talk to you next week. We didn't call it natural shredding season, Cameron. We called it shredding season.
You're right.
Okay? There was no word natty in there, and there was no rules that ever stated you couldn't use PEDs. So
you don't know. You haven't seen my rules.
Listen, when you failed 2 years as miserably as I have, you got to do what you got to do in year 3, okay?
Hey, call up your boy TJ Dillashaw. Ask him for some PEDs. It's not too early.
Shots fired.
I liked TJ before this. I'm disappointed in you, TJ. If you're
Shots fired on the podcast.
I think we should introduce our guest here real quick. Before,
this is actually the first time on the ALLiN podcast, if I'm not mistaken. Michael.
You are not mistaken. It is my first time here.
How does it feel to be on?
You're going to talk a little bit louder.
It feels incredible. I'm very excited to be here talking about Jason's picograms.
My picograms. You're gonna have to. Oh, are those the microdosed LSD that you found in your guest house?
No, that would be the sample size that they found John Jones, the picograms.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, just ask John about those picograms.
Yeah.
It's a science. It's a science in itself.
I remember that.
So, Michael, would you like to introduce yourself to everybody? Who and what are you doing here with Iron 3?
Yeah, I am the director of the Inner Circle for Iron 3. I am here enjoying warm weather, coming from Illinois, where everything is gray with a 70% chance of negative 20 weather. It's very nice to be in the desert, seeing giant cactuses and pretty painted sunsets, and feeling the warmth of the sun again.
So much fun.
It's very nice. Thank you for having us. We appreciate it.
Awkward silence as people walk through the door here, and so people understand that.
But this is the casual podcast of the week, so it's allowed.
People don't understand how chill of a vibe it is when we record. I mean, there's video, so if you're watching us on YouTube, you actually can see just how casual we keep it in here. But if you're listening to us on the podcast, it's the single most relaxed environment ever. I've got 2 pancakes sitting next to me. Cameron's got every drink and every supplement known to man.
I brought my dog.
Teddy brought his dog, and he's not even on a fucking wired-in mic. He's walking around the office.
Yeah, it feels great.
And so Michael's in here just hanging out. He's
guys.
Do they actually do work here? Is my paycheck going to bounce?
Yeah.
What the fuck? So
this is just a normal Thursday at the Iron 3 HQ.
Go to the bank on the 15th and see that direct deposit didn't actually get put in there.
So, but no, I mean, on my end, it's really cool, and you guys kind of brought this to my awareness inside of a topic for today, but I hadn't really considered it. But, we're all here, obviously, by different paths, but all those paths were kind of guided by the same thing, in the sense that each and every person that sits in this room right now made the decision to go all in on themselves. And, we were talking about risk-taking, and obviously I think risk-taking lives inside of just the notion of going all in. We talk about that all the time. What does it mean to go all in? And, people will send us emails and send us texts and tag us, and they're like, oh, I'm going all in on this, I'm going all in on that. And it's do you really know what going all in means? Because it's not just taking the action, it's understanding everything associated with taking the action. And I think there's some stuff that lives beyond the surface that a lot of people haven't identified yet. And I think that's what can be really fun about what we're about to talk about. Mm-hmm. So, we got Cam, who just went all in and drove literally across the fucking country. Well, Daddy, you drove across country too.
Yeah.
I was the only like pussy that sent all my stuff on a truck.
I sent him a text. Yeah, we're packing up. I'm like, oh man, that drive's gonna be terrible, right? He's like, no, I'm flying.
My dad's gonna drive. Well,
He's like, my family's
well
driving.
played,
I'm flying.
Yeah,
I'm like,
shout out to Daddy Phillips for deciding that he thought it would be way more fun to drive my Escalade across the country than making me do it.
It sounded like he had a blast, to be fair to him.
Yeah. Well,
He brought his best friend.
Like his best friend decided that he could use some time away from his wife too, and so they rode across the country for 4 or 5 days with both dogs in the back of the truck, and like literally getting pet-friendly hotels, and yeah, I mean, it sounds like they actually had a good time just connecting and shooting the shit, and so.
To be fair, you just didn't bail. You actually had other things already planned.
Yeah.
Was that a coincidence? I don't know. You know?
Oh,
where
damn!
was
can't
I?
make
Wasn't
that.
I at like a?
You were in California, I think.
Yeah, I was at like a seminar, or no, it was a cert in NorCal, and then I flew from NorCal here and got everything squared
Your
away,
schedule
so.
was crazy around that move in time.
Yeah.
Like
The fact that we did a move at that time when I think I traveled like 4 out of 5 weeks was borderline ridiculous.
Yeah.
But it all came together.
Hey, happened
So
in the end.
we're here, the office is here, and we're all having this podcast now. So, but yeah, I mean, it's. Somebody asked me recently, I think it was, I don't even know who it was. Someone was like, how did the go all in thing happen? And I was like, man, that's a really good question, because I had never like thought about it. It was just kind of like by proxy when it was Megan, shout out to Megan, who actually was the one that walked through the door 5 minutes ago, that named the company. She came up with IN3 and said, nutrition in 3 things: performance, aesthetics, life. And I thought it was genius. We had literally been searching for a company name for the better part of 8 to 10 weeks. Like, it was the most frustrating thing I've ever been through. And I was like, yeah. And I'm like, and then, we all kind of live by this go all in philosophy. So it makes sense. And like, it always stuck, but I had never considered like, what the fuck does that actually mean? And so I was challenged on that recently on a podcast. And the truth is, I didn't have a great explanation. Like, I was like, God, that sucks. Like, you just asked me about my tagline.
I'm Mr. All
and
In.
I got nothing for you.
God damn it.
So it really forced me to like go home and think about it. But I think that, everybody associates it with taking massive action, not looking back. But I think that where I believe it to be misunderstood is really not having fears and betting on yourself. And we talked about this on the last podcast inside of expectations and being paralyzed by what other people think. I think going all in is the antithesis of what everybody suffers from right now, which is caring about what other people think. Like, when you're all in on something, you got blinders. Like, you're like, fuck what that person thinks, fuck what that person does. The intro of the podcast, fuck all the noise, fuck all the bullshit, go all in and go do your thing. Like, that is the definition of going all in, is genuinely not giving a fuck what other people think, doing it because it's the right thing, not because it's going to produce financial results, not because it's going to produce physical results, but because it's the right thing, and the right thing is always the right thing.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I love that. And people always like, I think a question that comes with that is, how do I know what's the right thing? And like, that's kind of like, it's a really hard way to explain, but I think that when you get up in the morning and you really don't have to think about it in terms of like what you are doing on a daily basis, and whether work starts at like 7 and ends at 12, or work starts at 4:30 in the morning and ends at 9 p.m, as long as it doesn't feel like work, and what you're doing is pursuing a longer goal that feels right within you and like burns that kind of fire, I think that's when you're going all in on whatever it is that you are pursuing and you dream of. So
I'm really interested to know, because we all went all in on something. Like, when you ultimately decided to come work for us, and you're like, okay, I'm out of the strength conditioning world, because you and I had been discussing it while you were going through your internship, and you really didn't know. You're like, okay, I need to finish this internship, I'll do some side work, and then there was a moment when you came to me and you're like, okay, I'm ready. Like, what was that like? Because I think, Ed, that's what everybody wants to know, right? They're like, how can I actually do this? People are literally petrified. They're scared to go all in. What was that moment like? Why did you make that commitment? And then when it was like, hey, I'm doing something completely new, I'm moving my fucking life to Virginia to live in a basement, and then I'm moving across the country. What was that like?
Yeah. Well, let's just start with the basement thing. That was no basement. That was no ordinary basement. That was a 5-star basement. It had a cinema room. It had my own bathroom.
Did you get Starbucks every morning too?
Pretty much, yeah. There's a little bit of cat shit there when I first moved, but
Let's not talk about those cats.
but
There may or may not have been one that got thrown across the living room.
I think the big thing for me is like when I go back and I retrace, like, Teddy, you were doing your master's degree in Florida. You were on this track to kind of like go into, at the time, what was and still is a passion of mine, strength and conditioning and training and helping others in like the fitness industry. I was doing this work for Jason alongside that, and like things were hectic, and I was doing the internship too. And all my life up to there, I kind of done things where it was, and we talked about this in the previous podcast, like in life, you're taught this is the way of doing things. So you go to school, you get work experience around what you're learning, and you get a job in that, and then you get married and you just kind of build your life, and like that's the expectation of like what you do. And I was doing that to an extent, and don't get me wrong, like before that I was doing an economics bachelor's, and the strength and conditioning was way more enjoyable, but I still didn't have that feeling of like complete freedom and complete, every day I was getting up and I was really kind of like living my own life. There was still a lot of order that didn't excite me, and although I was enjoying the internship, there was things about it where I didn't feel completely free and like to express like what I believed in and the things that interested me within strength and conditioning. And the work I was doing for you, it had a lot more flexibility. It had a lot more of creativity, and like I was getting a lot of enjoyment out of creating something, and like you giving me the trust of, hey, we need this video, or we recorded this, like let's use it for promo on social media, and you know it's going to still help people and affect people in the fitness industry and from a nutrition side of things. So I was still kind of doing that, but I just had the feel of like expressing myself and doing things the way I wanted to do them for the first time. And I got attracted to that feeling, and I was like, why not give it a go? What's the worst thing that can happen right now? Because it feels good right now, and I can always go back to plan B, you know?
So on that, like how many, because, and this is going back to like the last podcast, so if you guys haven't listened to the last podcast on expectations, you need to listen to it.
Mm-hmm.
How many people told you you're fucking crazy?
A lot, including probably my parents. They were like, are you sure? Like, you've invested all this money to come out here and study and get this degree in exercise physiology, and you're going to go and do something on the media side? Like, it was the responsible attitude to have, you know? Of
course.
And like,
well,
to an extent.
I'll counter that, because it's responsible relative to the expectations of Western culture, right? And so I don't necessarily believe where I've been from, like where I've been, you know, to, and what I've been through, that it's the responsible attitude for people. But I'm completely different. You know, like I don't work in the corporate world, and I don't do all that shit.
Yeah.
But I get what you're saying. Like from a cliche perspective, yes, it was the responsible attitude.
So yeah, that like there was that pressure from my parents. There was the people that I was working this internship with that were on a similar track to me. Like, hey, I'm doing this and I'm getting all this experience because I want to do this. And I was like, I don't have the same want for that reason, and I am tempted by the opportunity to go and work for Jason and kind of do this thing. And there's always one video which I remember, and like we reference Gary Vee a lot, but there's this video, and it's an older one of his, and it's him outside of like a New York City setting, and he's saying, you've got fucking time, like take advantage of being in your 20s now. If you need to live with your parents, if you need to save money, like you've got time to figure out what the hell you want to do. And in that moment, like I wasn't fully set on this is what I want to do. And I was like, this is an experience that, hey, it could fail. And like in 2 years time, I could be like, no, wasn't for me. But I've got the opportunity now, no ties, no life ties, to go and experience something that feels right in this very moment, you know? And that kind of helped me make that hard decision against parents telling me, hey, this may not be like a smart thing to do considering all the past work you've just put in, all my peers. So it's really having the balls and the reason to kind of like make a decision that's probably not the logical and like PC one.
100%.
Yeah, I mean the millennial mindset's different than our parents' mindset, right?
Mm-hmm. I
mean it's pretty obvious on that. I mean I think a lot of times they're in the mindset of what qualifies you to even think that that's a possibility, right? You know, I don't know if this goes into like a right versus a privilege type conversation, right? Like I think a lot of times, especially like my parents are in the same boat. They're like, well, you're going to go out there, so what qualifies you to do your job? And I was like, that's a great question. I was like, to be honest, just I like doing it, and they kind of like my work, so we're gonna wing it and see what happens.
Yeah.
And then they're just still in their heads like they can't compute. That doesn't make sense. It's not like 1 + 1 = 2 at that point, right? It's like here's an algorithm, here's like, Pythagorean theorem, and we're going to plug in some numbers and see what happens at that
Well,
point.
I mean, a lot of the distance that my dad and I had for quite some time revolved exactly around that. His favorite fucking words were like, "Oh, it's pie in the sky." Like, you have these visions, but like they're visions. Like people like us, we're just middle class. Like we don't fucking do that. And, he always cautioned me against like thinking that big, that like things like that were possible. And some of that it created distance because I never believed anytime he said it. Like I never was. Anytime he's like, nope, like you're thinking too big, I immediately was kind of like, fuck off. Like I never let those thoughts penetrate me, which I'm super grateful for. For whatever reason, I was hard-headed as fuck. And,
Sure.
And I've said the story so many times. Like when I made my first $1 million, my mom asked me like, when are you gonna get a real job? I was like, Mom, what the fuck are you talking about? And she was like, well, one with benefits and everything. And I was like, hey, Mom, how many employers do you know that pay 100% of their employees' benefits? And she was like, oh, nobody does that. And I was like, oh, I do. Like, so do you think I have a real job? Because every one of my employees that has benefits, we pay 100%. They're not taking shit out of their paycheck for that. And she was like, oh, wow, like maybe you do have a business. And like, but I mean,
That was it.
Like, yeah, it was the benefits that
was
did
the
it.
benefits.
I mean,
The benefits,
Screw
she's
the
like,
revenue.
oh, yeah.
Screw the revenue. I mean, the fact that we had, taken what was quote unquote unscalable and scaled, forget that. But
Doesn't matter.
No, benefits were helpful. But no, I mean, I agree. I think that it's cool to me to hear that perspective. Like, dude, I'd love to hear the same from you. Looking at Cameron, sorry guys for listening.
If you're not
That was
watching
super
video,
weird.
Jason staring into somebody's eyes.
That long gaze. It's just so nice outside.
Long, dreamy gaze. Before you go into that though, Cameron, like you said something just there was like, you trust your skills and like, it's going to work out. Like, that's so simple. And sometimes the best way to think about things is with such a simplistic kind of like viewpoint, because as humans, we can overthink the shit out of things.
Sure.
It's like, you could think about all the possible things that could go wrong, probably like your parents did when you pitched them the job. But you didn't. You're just like, I feel good about it. I think that I can help out, so I'm going to go.
So on that, like, what comes to mind is, obviously we've coached tens of thousands of people at IN3, and I there's no way to quantify this. There's no way to study it, but it always goes through my mind when we look at successful clients and non-successful clients. And the clients that are successful, I don't always believe it's a product of just the diet and everything like that, right? And I'm super quick to say, if you've ever worked with me, I'm like, I wasn't the reason you're successful. Like, I put some fucking words on paper. You're the one that implemented. But I would also argue that same mindset is what, like, basically was before all of it. That same mindset was, do you really believe that you're capable of achieving the results you desire? Hiring the coach is effectively the gateway drug, right? That gives you the opportunity to create results. But how many people do you think, even inside of coaching relationships, continue to hold themselves back because of the external beliefs that they've been brought up in? They clearly have the resources to hire the coach. They're getting the proper program, yet they're just continuing to fuck it up.
Yeah.
And you have to look at, like, physically, you have all the capabilities to do what you need to do inside of a program. Like, hitting your macros is not overly difficult from a physical, like, standpoint, right? Just purely planning out your day, hitting your macros, like, it's not fucking hard. Yet it doesn't happen for every single person. Do you think that's more a function of self-doubt that's been created from 20 plus years on this, like, earth? Or do you think it's other shit, like people pleasing? Like, I'm really interested to know your thoughts on it. Michael?
Yeah, I think that it's probably a mixture of both. Certainly we come up with these self-limiting constraints, and some of that is learned upon or learned along the way. When you are told it's pie in the sky,
Yep.
or you're just middle class, that's not for you, that's for someone else. And so you have these sets of constraints that are placed upon you by the outside world, and they weigh you down, and that's where the thoughts kind of get in your own head. I think when it comes to going all in on something, you really have to shed those constraints and understand that you walk in purpose. Any truly successful person, whether it's an athlete or a mogul, any top tier businessman, they understand that they're there with purpose. They're there on purpose. There's something bigger for them. And they remove that limitation. It's not saying that you can't have fear or you can't have doubt or you can't have thought, but it's knowing that it's going to be okay because you're going to make it so. You're there for your purpose, and you will shed those self-limiting beliefs and those constraints that have been put upon you. And that's going all in.
100%. I love that. I mean, it goes back to last week. We talked a little bit about fear, right? I firmly believe a lot of people make their decisions based on fear versus on what, as you said at the beginning of this podcast, what should you be doing? What's the right thing to do?
But what is it fear of? Because I'm such a believer it's fear of judgment, but it's not just that, right? Like what fears are they living inside of? Because if I'm listening to this podcast right now and I'm like, fuck, like, yeah, I am scared, but what am I fucking scared of and how do I overcome it?
That's honestly that's a pretty thought-provoking question. We could probably sit here for an hour and just stare at the wall and come up with 100 different reasons, right? And I think it is a lot based on judgment, but then I think you also got to dig a little deeper, and it's just, I think it goes back to empowering. I think they're afraid to be in control of themselves because then there's nobody else to blame. Yeah. And when you get down that road and you realize you're at fault for where you are and where you want to go, that's pretty intense for someone to try and wrap their head around, because most people want to say, oh, my job sucks because my boss is an ass. Well,
I think the single greatest thing you can do as a person, whether you're trying to pursue business success, nutritional success, family success, is understand that you are singularly responsible for all of your success, and you're also singularly at fault for all of the negativity in your life.
Yes, absolutely.
And we just had a mastermind not that long ago, right? A month ago. And the big take-home message that we delivered was start owning your fucking power. Start owning your own shit. And wake up in the morning and understand that all the positivity that exists in your life today, you created. Stop trying to outsource that and be oh, Jason did that for me. Or no, motherfucker, I didn't do that for you. You did that shit for yourself. Can I give you framework to be successful? Of course I can, right? That's what I'm talented at. But you're the one that takes the action. But at the same token, if you wake up and someone in your life isn't happy, you need to look in the mirror and be okay, they're not happy. That's subsequently making me not happy. How am I at fault for this? And we talk about it all the time. If Cam writes an email that I don't like, it's not Cam's fault. That's my fault because I didn't lead him well enough. I didn't give him the right information to execute the way that he's capable of executing. If Teddy doesn't hit a deadline, it's not Teddy's fault 100%. It's my lack of leadership in showing him how important this deadline is and how critical that is and how he could have been more successful instead of hitting the deadlines. So many people are afraid to own that power. They're so afraid to be responsible for virtually everything. And, people look at it solely as failure, but people are really afraid to own their successes. Mm-hmm. Every single person listening to this right now, think to yourself, when is the last time you actually celebrated a success and celebrated it in the manner in which you gave yourself credit for celebrating the success? Yeah. That's fucking scary.
Dude, there's a saying own your shit. Why isn't the saying own your success?
Because people are scared of success. I mean, we could go.
They are. They're scared shitless of success.
I think, honestly, and I've even been wrapping my own head around this lately, just even when we have small wins here, I don't celebrate them. I'm not. Whether it's a small conversion from a sale, because we're empowering somebody else, or it's we had a good week in the office, whatever, maybe we had a great meeting, or we all just went out as a team and had dinner. That should be a success. But I think you go back into that fear. You're just oh, this is a high. When's the low coming? Right? You're just sitting back, waiting to take the punches because for whatever reason, that's just how a lot of us are built. And I caught myself this week doing that so much and last week. And I was when's the last time I was just man, this is awesome. Yeah. I work for a great company. I get to sit here and do all these amazing things. Instead of celebrating, I've just been waiting on, okay, what's the next thing that's going to blow up? How am I going to be reactive and proactive? And it's just really crazy to catch yourself in those moments.
So, I mean, as we're talking and letting it unfold, I believe the definition of ALLiN is continuing to be written, right? As we all continue to add our input, but it's obviously trusting yourself. It's not caring what people think, but I think it's being capable of literally owning everything in your life, owning your thoughts, owning your reactions, owning your attitudes, owning your successes, owning your failures, being proud of all of them. I say all the time, like the single greatest things, like the two best things that ever happened to me were being anorexic and being broke. Now, that's probably like out of context, that's a horrible statement, right? Like I would never want somebody to take that soundbite and be like, Jesus, what a douchebag. But like inside of context, you come to understand like I was a lazy motherfucker prior to being anorexic, right? And inside of that, I learned to be committed to something. I hated adversity in my life. Like if you would have watched me, and at that time I was on track to be like a very good professional golfer. If you'd have watched me have like a bad round of golf, like I just gave up, right? Like 9 holes in, I had a shitty front 9. I didn't play well on the back 9 because I just fucking threw in the towel. I didn't know what it was like to overcome adversity. Clearly it wasn't a talent issue. Like I could shoot really good rounds of golf, but it taught me a lot of things. And then obviously like being broke, it just teaches you like no matter where you're at in life, there's a solution, and so every day you wake up and you find the solution. You ignore the bullshit, and the bullshit's always going to be present. Like I mean, as somebody that has created higher levels of success in his life than ever dreamed possible, every time you take a step up, you just find more bullshit. Like there's bullshit at every fucking
Doesn't
level.
ever go away.
No, and like any successful person listening to this podcast right now will corroborate with that, and they're like, "Fuck yes."
There's probably just levels to it.
There is. I mean, dude, you and I were talking about taxes yesterday.
Yeah.
Right? Like I was telling Teddy, I'm like, here's a great way to make some cash, and I'm like,
Yeah.
it's tax-free money. And he's like, God, man, wouldn't it be great if all money was tax-free? And I'm like, fucking A, like you're telling me. Like,
Dude, I can only imagine. If I'm stressed about tax, I don't even want to know.
Well, like, and then somebody, like, it's like that at every level. People come into our mastermind and they're like, oh, I don't want to pay so-and-so X amount of dollars. And I'm like, do you understand what my payroll is? Like, my payroll every month exceeds 125K. And I'm like, there was a time in my life, if you would have told me I could write a $125,000 check, that I would have been like, you're completely full of shit, right? And now it's just a problem at a level that we've achieved. Okay, great. I will celebrate that all fucking day.
Yeah.
Right? And I'll also own it and say, hey, these are problems we've created. If we had the power to create these problems, we also have the power to build solutions and understand that we're probably building our future problems. And so it's the mindset that people have is a massive function of going all in. And I think that a lot of people are like, I fundamentally believe we've transcended nutrition coaching, right? I believe that the movement we've created has taken something that was purely numerical, purely like food-based, and really introduced the theories of mindset and
relationships,
like mentality, relationships, understanding how it affects your whole life, as a whole entity, right? And that's where we talk about the 3-dimensional model, frame, family, finance. I really believe we brought that to the surface. And so now I look at it, and going all in is not singular. It's not a singular dimension, right? It's multidimensional. It has to live across all walks of your life. And so you can't go all in on your fitness. That doesn't happen. You can't go all in on your family. You can't go all in on your finance. You can go all in on you, the end, right? And I think that's the biggest distinguishment people have to make, is they're like, oh, I'm going to train for this powerlifting meet, I'm all in. Like, no, you're not. No, you're not. Because if you're losing balance elsewhere, and even if you win that fucking powerlifting meet and you go home and like you got zero money in the bank, are you really going to be fulfilled that you won the power meet? And the chances are no, right? If you lost every single friend in during that journey, are you really going to be fulfilled? The answer is no. So I don't believe that you went all in. I believe you just committed an awful mistake that is the antithesis of going all in. And that's where I think people are fucking this up.
Yeah, dude. Like an example I'll give is like it's that like athlete example. Like, great, I get that athletes have really main goals, and like I heard about it on. I don't want to shout anyone out, but like I was listening to Ben Berger on the podcast, and he was talking about how catching kind of like sacrifices now a relationship because that's not her main goal and it's a distraction. And to an extent, I agree with that, because like she has to be very kind of like single-minded in what she wants, and her lifestyle has to be orientated around that. But I think as human beings, like we need a balance of everything. Like there's a lot of things that go into like our overall happiness, and sacrificing that one thing with it because of the clear goal, I don't think it leads to overall success. And this is just my opinion. It doesn't lead to an overall like an achievement of something.
No, I completely agree.
There's got to be compensation somewhere else, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like a muscular injury. Like something else like compensates, and like that's not sustainable in the long term.
Well, I think you're starting to see this trend at higher levels too. Like a lot of professional athletes retiring younger. You're seeing a lot of NFL guys leave the league much earlier than their career could have been. Like I just pulled up on Instagram on ESPN, Channing Frye. He's 35 years old. Clearly his career in the NBA is not over. But he literally said, listen, I'm rich, I'm a champion, I'm 35, and I'm retiring to live a great life. So if you think I suck, I'll see you at LA Fitness in a year, motherfucker. Like,
That's so awesome.
which is like, literally though, he's just like, listen,
Touché.
I made my money, I enjoyed my life, I'm going to live my life. He's not living on the terms set forth by anybody else. Could he make way more money staying in the league? Yes. But he realizes that going all in on basketball is not really going all in. Going all in on his life actually required sacrifice on the basketball front, right? Something that, I mean, shit, he's 35. He probably spent 34 years hustling his ass off to be like the best version of himself he could be.
And I respect that, but I also think that comes with, like, he had an expectation that it was guaranteed he was going to make it to retirement. Anything could have happened in that time.
Sure.
And if he'd have, like, I don't want to say it, but, like, got a terrible injury or whatever, he spent all that time in the past going all in on basketball for nothing because he did make
but how do we
sacrifices.
know he went all in on basketball? Like, how do we know that maybe Channing Frye was only 85% of what Channing Frye could have been because he actually didn't go all in on basketball?
Fair point.
And he chose to live life.
Fair point.
Right? We don't know that.
No.
And that's the thing. I think so many people, that's the expectation, is that to be great at something, you only go all in on that. How do we know that Katrin couldn't actually be a better CrossFitter if she had balance in her life? We don't know that.
Yeah.
There's no data. And there's never going to be studies on that, right? It's extremely subjective. And the unknown is always the unknown. But I think that, like, going all in is understanding how everything affects the other aspects of your life and making sure that they're all in harmony. Whatever that is to you, right? And everyone gets to have an individual definition. Totally fine.
I'll say one thing, like, it's carrying on the CrossFit theme, but, like, I've watched a hell of a lot of Matt Fraser interviews and listened to a lot of podcasts the last 2 years, and everyone wants to focus on all he has to do is train. He's got Sammy, he's got all these people looking after all his other shit, which allows him to, like, focus on his main goal, which is true. But one thing he always comes back to is as long as I'm having fun and I'm happy. And I think that dude, genuinely, like, a big thing behind his success when he started to win was he was happy.
Agreed.
Like, life was good, and not just because all his shit was being taken care of and he was a beast in the gym. I think there was a lot of things going on, a lot of life balance.
I think you just look at simple physiology. Him being happy says he's able to create a parasympathetic state a lot more frequently, which we know at the highest levels there has to be recovery, right? So there is some science behind this going all in.
Yeah.
Right? This isn't just some proverbial fucking, word mess that we're throwing out there that we're trying to get people hooked on to eventually buy, like, all in apparel. Yes, I just said that. But
Wait, is that a thing?
that's gonna be a thing. So, but it's not just like some, like, moniker that, like, we made up and live by. Like, there's legit science behind this, because I genuinely believe when you go all in, you're able to create the right doses of sympathetic and parasympathetic. And, we talked about this last week on a Facebook Live. We talked about, like, the delta on either side. I think that, if you're creating this massive ability to crush shit sympathetically, like, you fundamentally have the ability to recover. But if you're not using that ability to recover and you're allowing that delta on the parasympathetic side to get smaller and smaller, you're also diminishing your ability to create sympathetic drive, which is the opposite of the all-in lifestyle. So
I've actually got a really good way to bring Michael a little bit more into this podcast, because we've talked about all in from a very kind of, like, individual sense and, like, what you can do to go all in yourself and allow you to be a better person. I think this dude to my right is a prime example of actually someone that makes a hell of an effort in making other people's lives better, and I think that in turn has allowed him to achieve the success that he has, because he's very much a person that goes out of his way to do things for other people, and I think that is actually part of going all in. I think when you realize the journey is not all about you, and that there's a lot of, like, good things that can happen from just being a good person to other people, I think that leads to a lot of success. And I'm not, like, kissing your ass there, Michael. I'm saying it because I actually believe it's true, and it's something that I've noticed about you since kind of, like, getting to know you. I mean, we became friends on social media way before, like, any of this, like, work relationship happened, because you kind of just put yourself out there and you were a positive kind of person that came into my life. So I'm kind of interested in your thoughts on that, in terms of, like, being more than just yourself, like, doing things for more than just yourself.
Well, part of it, and I'm gonna use your Matt Fraser example, is you have to be happy with what you're doing. It's really hard to go all in if you're not happy about something. And if whatever you're doing is solely focused on just you it's really hard to be happy with that. So going back to the whole Katrin thing and talking about balance, and then, you know, in terms of early retirements, I think you have to remember that balance is an illusion. It's not a permanent thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Balance is
constant.
bullshit.
Yeah, we did an episode on that.
It's constantly moving, and so there are going to be times where you're going to have to kill it for 70 hours a week at the office to bring things up, and you're going to have conversations with people around you like, hey, I'm not going to see you much for the next month, but after that it's going to be back to however it was.
Mm-hmm.
And so you really have to understand that when you're talking about balance. It's constantly in flux no matter what. But as far as, you know, my view with why I do what I do, you know, I got into coaching and training and programming because when I was younger, I had no one there to mentor me. I had no one to show me how to live life in a proper manner. And I went down a really dark path. You know, I got into trouble here and there and everywhere else.
We've been hearing some of the war stories lately.
Dude, I need to hear these stories.
They are not
They're-
podcast
they're
friendly.
They're not
Maybe another
fit for
segment of the
public.
podcast.
And
Yeah.
I would have to plead the fifth.
Oh, I love it.
But, you know, for all of the internal anger and strife and everything that I went through and what it caused me, I don't want other people to feel that. And so if there's anyone who needs help, I will always be there to do whatever I can. And it comes from a place of knowing what it's like to be alone and to not have anyone to do something with you or to kind of lead you down the right path and take right action. And so, you know, we talk about the why and then the why behind the why and all the 5-7 levels of stuff. I think when you're really in tune with your purpose, or at least your life's purpose at that time, it makes it easier to go all in, because you can live without fear, knowing that at the end of the day you will burn to the ground before you see yourself fail, you know. And I think that it's something that can change. You know, you can go into one lifestyle and really be firmly committed to going down the strength and conditioning route, but then something else comes along and it gives you a different viewpoint on life. And so it's easy to go with that because that's where life's leading you, but you feel the joy in doing it and being around people who are pushing you to be better, contributing to a team that you're making better, that you have ideas that are expressed, that are received well. You know, and when you can take all of those skill sets and ultimately focus them on one thing at a time, being present in the moment with whatever you're doing, I think it's easy to live an all-in lifestyle when you're present in whatever you're doing.
Is it just basically saying fuck the how? Is that kind of what I'm getting
Well,
out of all this?
I think a lot of it, yeah. I mean, saying fuck how is definitely something we've talked about a lot in like the last 2-3 months is, you know, you're asking the wrong questions. Mm-hmm. You know, we, even inside nutrition coaching and mastermind coaching, we say what and why will reveal the how, right? If we understand what we need to do and why we actually want to do it, the how instantly begins to reveal itself, right? You know, for you, Teddy, like you decided, well, what do I want? Well, I want happiness and I want fulfillment, right? Why do I want that? Well, I'm fucking 23 years old, and that's what you were like when you made the decision. And it's like, okay, great. Well, the how showed itself. Well, the how is I take this job, I take this chance, and I, you know, figure shit out. You know, same with you, dude. Like you wanted to express your skill set. You wanted to do you. Why? Like, because like that's fucking what makes you happy, right? Like fundamentally, you had tried all the other shit. Like it didn't make you happy. And so all of a sudden the how revealed itself. And, you know, it continues to show itself that way. I mean, you know, Michael, like you and I were talking yesterday, like we have this office space and then we were talking about like local market here in Scottsdale, Arizona. And we were talking about what do we want? Well, we want impact in Scottsdale. Well, why do we want that? It's the fucking city we live in. Like it's touted as the fittest city in America, but like, no, I want to be a part of that. That's why. Well, guess what revealed itself? The how is, you guys will see this in the next 6 months, ALLiN is going to have a massive presence in the Scottsdale market. We are actually going to start opening up in-person opportunities for more and more people in this area. That was never something had been discussed literally like last week. For fucking years, that this company has been in business, never been discussed. But we started leading with the questions what and why yesterday, and the how showed itself. People always ask us all the time, like, how do you think of the shit that you think of? I don't. Like, we just ask the right fucking questions and it comes to us. Like, we're not crazy visionaries and like have these crazy ninja fucking tactics. We just understand that there's a very distinct process to achieving success, and it really starts with asking the right questions.
100%. I mean, because I've heard tons of people, especially smart people, very successful people, say it's not good enough to always just ask questions. It has to be the right questions. And even if you're failing, maybe it's because you aren't asking the right questions,
Sure.
right? You could be failing also because you are asking the right questions. So, I mean, it's kind of hard.
Well, I mean, asking the right questions is the start. I mean, right? Like,
Right.
I mean, you can be failing because you are asking the right question. You're simply not executing.
Sure.
But even if you don't ever ask the right questions, you're never going to be successful.
Right.
So that is absolutely like the gateway.
I know everyone just instantly went, well, how do I know if it's the right question, Jason?
Well, so
don't
quite
say
no,
how.
but no. Honestly, there's probably a lot of people right now, wherever they're listening to this, like Jim, Carr, wherever else, like asking that, like, how do I know if it's the right question? Well, if you're starting with how do I do something, if you're asking questions in pursuit of tactics, you're asking the wrong questions.
Mm-hmm.
If you're continuing to like wake up and perfect example, I'm in the middle of writing the VSL, right? Video sales letter
Yep.
for NCI. And so for those of you guys that know about NCI, like this will be a really cool video for you to watch because I really explain the difference as to how it's, you know, how we've separated NCI from all the other nutrition certs and why we have 1,500 plus coaches that are crushing it in the space. These other certifications might have like 100 people collectively crushing it in the space. And I talk about that. I'm like, so many people are caught up in the tactics. Like, I need to know keto. I need to know fasting. I need to know carnivore. I need to know carb cycle. I need to know this. And I was like, no, every single one of those people are wrong. And I actually, in the video, I go into talking about how there's two types of coaches out there. There's the struggler who's literally bouncing around trying to learn diet after diet after diet and trying to implement diet after diet after diet. And then there's the person crushing it that understands it really was never about the diet and that it was about two very distinct things. You're going to have to watch the video to find out what those two things are because I'm not going to reveal it all here. But inside of those two things, like, you'll be very shocked at what they are. Mm-hmm. Neither one of them revolve around the question how. They actually lead you into connecting with your clients and starting with what and why. And this is really the beauty of NCI. It's the beauty of ALLiN3. It's like we've trained coaches to do this for years. We demonstrated success, and now we're teaching other coaches how to do it. But
Yeah.
completely agree, man. Like that's the foundation of everything.
For sure. I mean, I can obviously instantly relate. I do the sales, right?
Yep.
Shout out to a lady I talked to yesterday. She was like, it's so cool talking to you on the phone. I was like, oh my God, do I have a fan?
Cam's famous.
It happened.
I was like,
Teddy, you remember that. The first time someone's like, I just wanted to meet Teddy. I'm like, well, fuck me. Let me take the picture.
I remember who it was too. Like that was one, but I remember when we were in. It was here in Scottsdale. It was for the last cert we did, and it was Savannah. You know, who's the wife of Dan Ike, the UFC fighter.
Yes, Savannah EJ.
And she was like,
Absolutely.
I recognize your voice. And I was like, really? She's like, are you the guy on the podcast? And I was like, yes, I am.
Are you that Australian?
Don't get into that. This is we had no Australian jokes.
we
up
tried to
there.
cover it last week and we just went south. But yeah, I mean, instantly I can relate. I talk to people every day, all day, right? And they instantly come having this conversation, think I'm going to reveal this magical plan that ALLiN3 has just created, right? That it's going to be some sort of crazy thing. It's this new box they're going to just put themselves in and enclose. And inside of that box, they're going to live and be happy and magical. And there's going to be rainbows. There's pots of gold. Everyone's fit, Instagram ready, right? Just beach ready, just walking out with six packs. And I sit there and tell them, I'm like, literally, we create a program, it's individualized and customized, and it's what you wanted. I said, if you listen to Jason at any point in time, he tells you you matter. And you get everything you want out of this program because you have to put in the work. We don't show up. We don't meal prep for you. We don't smack things out of your hand like all the funny Instagram videos, right? Where the coaches show up and they smack cheeseburgers out of people's hands. Like, we're not going to do that. If you want that, then we got to incorporate that into your goals and what you really want out of this. And I think sometimes it takes people back, and obviously we dive a little deeper in the conversation, but it just goes back to that tactical mindset. They think that we're going to lay out this plan and they're going to execute inside of this box, and yet we're like, what do you want? We're going to help you get there, and we're going to create things for you, absolutely, but it's not going to be us to do the work. It's got to be on you still, and it goes back to that empowering.
I think one of the things you just said is really important. You said, what do you want? And I think a lot of people are waiting for others to define what they want for them.
Absolutely.
Like, so many people are actually afraid to express what they truly want. They want the world to define what they should want. And
because what they may want may be weird, which goes back to expectations.
Exactly, right? Like, or just, you know, not even weird, but pie in the sky.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you know, I openly say all the time, and in our one-day masterminds or in our business discussions, right? Like one of the first things I make people do is tell me how much money they want to make. And like the awkwardness around that is ridiculous. Like you put 10 people in a room around and you've been there. Like
I've been
you
there
feel
a lot
it.
of times.
Like
no
we
one
go,
says anything.
Yeah, like we go around the room and the numbers you hear are so small. Like it's ridiculous. And like at the end of it, I'm like, God, you're all full of shit, right? Like, and I tell them that. I'm like, you're all fucking lying to me. I'm like, so let me explain to you the fact that like my number is $1 billion, right? That is my number because there's things that I have in my life associated with it, but I want to achieve elite status in everything I do. And finance is no secret, right? Like it's no different. And you know, there's very few billionaires in this world. So like to join the elite, you got to make $1 billion. Mm-hmm. That also means that I've impacted billions of lives, right? And I'm okay with that. And so I have no issues saying that. And anybody that wants to judge me for that and unfollow me for that, like that's okay. I'm totally on board with that. Like that's your own insecurity, and the day you overcome that insecurity, you'll come back and be like, okay, I fucked up. Mm-hmm. But it took me a long time to get to that place. Like I used to not want to talk about being a millionaire, and like because I was like, oh man, I get judged, and you're so worried about that. So it's there's comfort that goes into it. There's fear. There's perception. There's asking the wrong questions. There's balance. And so when we start looking at what is the definition of going all in, it's extremely multidimensional.
Yeah.
I think it is, hopefully after this podcast, right? Like at this very point, I'm hoping everyone's like, Jesus, I didn't know what going all in was, right? Because again, I think that the connotation is like, well, I'm going to go all in on fitness, and I'm going to go all in on PRing my snatch.
Yeah.
And so it's
further
like
from the truth.
Working their mobility and working their technique and working their overload and speed and whatever else goes into PRing a snatch, and then you realize, well, like going all in on a snatch is not even a fucking thing, right? Like it's so myopic that like it is the antithesis of going all in. You fucking perverts. Like Jesus Christ.
I wasn't laughing.
You're all fucking perps. I instantly like look around this room, and you guys if you're on YouTube, you literally can like look at the fucking eyes of these three fucks. And they're like looking at each other like, oh, he's talking about pussy.
All of our
you just lost every female follower. But
that's funny, but I actually
right, Teddy, right.
Teddy, we're gonna need you to edit that out.
Lewis, at this time, no kidding.
I'll take care of these ones. We've learned.
But yeah, I mean, I feel like that's an appropriate place to end it because we haven't come to a firm conclusion of what going all in, because I think it's an abstract thing. I don't think there's never going to be a crystal clear definition, but I think all the things we've just discussed have to absolutely be part of it. I think it's something that we will continue to perfect as a company and hopefully lead the way. I think everyone gets to perfect it in their own life. And I think that you have to look at more so what is going all in not, right? And when you start to understand, and we wrote this in Macros Applied, I said, I believe more people need to understand what their goals are not than they need to understand what their goals are. Mm-hmm. And that's a crazy statement, completely contrary to the fitness industry right now, which is fine because I'm always contrarian. But I believe that's a problem. I believe it is a complete paralysis inside of goal setting, is everyone wants to talk about what their goals are and they overlook what their goals are not. And so when they talk about what their goals are, they don't completely speak the truth. Because if you come to me and you're like, yeah, I want more performance, right? I now as a coach, if I'm a good coach, I have to say, well, okay, are you cool with aesthetics not changing or potentially getting a little worse? And no coaches are saying that because it's a very uncomfortable conversation. A good coach will say that. Mm-hmm. And then you say, well, no, I'm not okay with that. All right, well, then inside of what you told me, you didn't tell me the whole truth. So I believe fundamentally a lot of people need to understand what do you not want as much as what do you want. And inside of understanding what going all in is, you must understand what going all in is not as well. It is not selfish. It is not singular inside a dimension. It's not limiting. It's not completely invested in one dimension. Mm-hmm. It is all encompassing. And I believe that if people can take that step back and learn to ask the right questions and learn like the broad spectrum of what going all in is, I think a lot more people will have success.
I like that, multi-dimensional. That's a good way to look at it. It's way more complex than just one thing.
That's why we're building three-dimensional humans, man. Three-dimensional model. That's literally what this was all built on. And I know everyone's waiting for that training to come out, but we'll just keep you in suspense a little longer. So
that was fun.
So
welcome to the podcast, Michael.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, it was a good one, guys. If you would please just hit us up on Instagram at ALLiN3. Let us know what you're all in on. Give us a little insight onto what your thoughts are about this as well, and maybe next week we'll give you a little shout out.
I like that.
See you next week, guys.